Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and 𝗁𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗄, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and usually I have my co-host 𝗁𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗄. Today, I'll be flying solo, though. I've got a very special guest on the show today. He was raised in Norway, but he came to the U.S. to study entrepreneurship. He was part of an AI chatbot, a drone tech, and a medical tech startup before starting his current SMS text marketing platform. If you want to know how to start up with a bootstrapper's mindset, and have kind of an idea of how to also do it with fundraising, which we'll talk about, you're going to want to listen to this episode for sure. And also, if you have any interest in learning about SMS text marketing, definitely want to check this out. Before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and to our mailing list, to our website, so you don't miss out on all of our free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. With that said, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Langelo Lien, to the show. How are you doing, man? And hopefully I get your name sort of right.
Nailed it.
Did I? Okay.
No, thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, it's pronounced impossibly, so I never correct people. It's like Langelo Lien. So I'm not going to have you say it twice.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how you got through that so quick, but yeah, that's awesome, man. So Martin, it's great to have you on the show today, and excited to get into this. Can you the first thing I want to know about is kind of how your entrepreneurial journey started. You know, you might want to let us know how why you came from Norway. Norway is a beautiful place. Like, what led you to the US from Norway, and what is it about entrepreneurship that really gets you fired up?
Yeah, so absolutely. I obviously born and raised in Norway, lived there for the first 20 years of my life. Actually, before I even visited the US, I decided to come here to study. So first day of college was my first day ever in America. So it's kind of a wild leap, but so growing up, always knew I loved kind of small little side hustles and doing small projects. Going all the way back from me and my friend mixing mouthwash, different types to make our own special mouthwash, and then selling them in Ziploc bags on the street.
That's awesome. Yeah. Just weird, repackage and branded, and that's there's a lot of good products out there that do that. So yeah, that's cool.
No, that's good. There's good ones that do it too, but that was definitely not one of the good ones.
Okay.
But somehow we got a couple of people that wanted to buy that. I think the first time we really started making some money was in second grade, when we were one of my friends had a calligraphy set that he got as a second grader. Who gives that to a second grader?
That is an interesting second grade gift, that's for sure. Yeah, it's advanced, I think.
Right? Yeah, and we didn't know how to use it, so all we knew was that it looked a little bit like a tattoo gun. And we were thinking, okay, so we got all these white erasers that everybody had, like pencil erasers, and we would kind of cut out a little bit of a design, fill it in with like the ink that comes in the calligraphy set, and then melt a plastic bag on top of it to then lock it in. So we turned it into a tattooed like white eraser. And
that's cool.
Suddenly we would offer this to our classmates, and we managed to make this pretty popular in the school.
Really?
So we kind of generated the demand that way, and it definitely covered our sweet tooth for the entirety of the second grade. And just continued doing small stuff like that. Some more successful than others. Definitely one of the failures was definitely the mouthwash situation. Ended up just tossing that out. But yeah, so continued to do that. Didn't really know that it was called really like trying to be entrepreneurial. It was mostly just having fun and loving to just make some new stuff and getting people excited about it. And it wasn't until I was really in high school that I recognized that, well, I want to actually do this full time, and I want this to be my career. The thing about Norway is most of the education system is completely different than what it is in the US. In the US, you have a lot of freedom to pick really any class that you want even outside of your field. So you could be a finance specialist, even though your degree is in history. In Norway, wide open. It's like if you study to be a doctor, you will do medical classes from the very first class that you do freshman year through college. There's no history, no religion, no kind of athletic gym classes, which was what I was thrown into my first semester of entrepreneurship degree, which was a little strange.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's interesting. Okay. Well, you got to keep the mind, body, and soul right. So I get that.
There you go.
You know, hitting the gym and feeling right in your body and your mind is super important. I get that.
Yeah. Came in very handy.
Hopefully they made that connection and didn't just like, hey, here's a gym class. You know, let's play dodgeball for 2 hours.
No connection. It was, I landed in the US and I was believing that it would be, okay, you're going to be getting your class schedule here. Then you go to these classes. It'll be extremely great. And you're going to learn all about entrepreneurship. But instead I showed up and my advisor asked me, hey, so what classes are you taking?
Okay.
Excuse me? So apparently you have to enroll to classes, which I learned the hard way. And by the time I got to the US, it was like 3 days before the first day of class. And I had to just take whatever classes they had.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Because things fill up, right?
Yep. It was a little bit bitter to know that I paid 30 grand for that. But but it was a good way for me to kind of integrate and get more used to the college lifestyle in the US. But yes, that was really what got me into wanting to study entrepreneurship was my background there. And the fact that you couldn't actually study entrepreneurship in Norway at the time. I know there's a couple of programs that popped up lately, but the closest thing back when I was choosing my education was just a business leader kind of college where I would learn how to be a manager of a large, already established conglomerate, which was not really interesting to me. Yeah. So started searching around.
Business school anyway. Sounds like just part of business school, you know, that you would learn that if like, you know, just a branch of it, right?
Exactly. So and I mean, it's super valuable to know like the ins and outs of how to run an actual setup company. However,
if that's what you're into.
Exactly. But if you want to start your own company, then it's nothing that really teaches you, okay, this is how you go about it. This is the tax implications. This is the entities that you need to choose. This is how you set up your business bank. This is how you do your books. So there was like those small, like little, like technical knowledge and know-how that you wouldn't learn through that I felt like I wanted to know so that I could get a leg up if I wanted to start my own company right afterwards. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. So, I knew that obviously when I was studying entrepreneurship that it would be the US. It just seemed like the natural choice. And after searching, for like the best undergrad entrepreneurship programs, surprisingly enough, OU, like the University of Oklahoma, came up as top 3.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I was thinking, okay, well, this is perfect for me. The Norwegian government covers education, but only to a certain point, only to, I think, 30 grand. So it's like, I know it was Michigan University, there was Babson, and like NYU, all of which were like 60 grand.
NYU I know NYU is wild because my wife is a dentist and she looked at NYU. She ended up going to dental school in Texas, which was a good choice because no offense to NYU and other dental schools, but the dental school in San Antonio is like top. They don't like rank them anymore as much as they used to, but when they did rank, it was like up right at the top, I think number 1, but I'm just bragging a little bit on it right now, but
please do.
But it was wild. Like NYU dental school was like 2.5 or 3 times as much as you know, dental school is in San Antonio. And I mean, she came out with a good amount of student loans. So it's insane to think about 2.5 to 3 times more than that, you know, like
it's insane. It's
so
almost
I know
hard
NYU
to justify.
Yeah.
So it was a good choice for her.
Yeah. Well, and it's good that you were looking at that too, especially you know, studying entrepreneurship, you know, you really have to figure out, it's like lesson number 1 is figure out where you can, you know, where you can get the most bang for your buck. Obviously you want to go, like, you don't want to spend $5 grand and get no education, right? Like you want to get what you're sometimes you definitely get what you pay for, but sometimes you also do overpay significantly. And that's something that I think the higher education system in this country is really struggling with and will continue to struggle with, because people are going to more and more, not just for entrepreneurship, but for all kinds of other different programs, they're going to be like, why do I need to pay 60 grand a year to go here? Why do I have to, have this start out with this massive debt, So, but I think it's really cool that you identified that, hey, you could have gone to business school. That would have given you some knowledge. But I've said for a while that I think if you want to start a business school is a total waste of money, and you should just start a business, because you're not going to know what the heck you're doing. But you don't need 4 years of, somebody like, I don't think business school does a good job in general of teaching you how to start a business. You might, if you are working for a large corporate company and you need that piece of paper to get you to the next level, because they're like, we don't care what you learn or don't learn. If you don't have that piece of paper, you're not going to be able to advance. Then that's one thing. Right. But yeah, when you're doing your own thing, just starting a business is the best thing. But I was actually thinking about this a little bit earlier, and as I was going through looking at everything that you're doing, and I love that you studied entrepreneurship, because I think that's going to be more and more of a thing, and I'd love to see that take off. Like, I'd love to see the way that we have a structure for, if you want to be an accountant, you go to college and you study finance and accounting and all this stuff. Like, I'm envisioning studying entrepreneurship, and basically the program says, listen, at the end of this, you may, after 2 to 4 years, whatever it is, you might be in a position to have paid off all of your debt right away. And what other, right away, right? Because you have that potential with a business. You don't have that potential as an accountant. You don't have, I studied engineering. There's no way I could have paid off 4 years of college right at the end of college. But if you start a business and you really focus on that for 2 to 4 years, and you have real guidance and people are on top of you, and I mean, that's powerful. People would be so much better off financially if that became more of a thing.
I would support that. I mean, that's one of the things that's almost a little misleading though about the education that I got. Was there was a lot of focus on, of course, start your own company, but there was very little opportunity to do so through the educational system. It was mostly hey, you're empowered, spend your pastime doing it, and do it in the background. I think there was one class where it was basically a semester where there was 5 classes in one, but all you did was run a company. But as soon as I suggested that we do something with software or some sort of consultancy for local businesses, they said, no, you need to take up a loan from a bank and you need to make a physical product.
Okay.
And I was like, so you want us to get into debt? Why?
Yeah.
And I could do this for free. What?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Right.
That was the biggest jab where I was like, okay, well, that does not really make sense. But besides that, I mean, everything else and all the professors and everything, I mean, there's many of them that I still keep in touch with, that put us in touch with a lot of our mentors now, advisors, as well as even introducing us to investors. I mean, it's definitely open that they're the professors there have the same vision that you do. That most
want to see you succeed.
Should. Yeah, because it's definitely powerful if it gets to the point where they help you, not through just educating you how it's been done in the past, but tell you exactly how to do it. And then you can get that guidance as you're going through it. And by the time you graduate, you should have a company. I think that would be revolutionary.
Yeah, man. I think there's something to that, because I was thinking about all these courses that you can take online, because I'm thinking, okay, why isn't some of this stuff that you can find online not really found and is up to date? There's a lot of BS out there. So there's a lot of courses that aren't going to get you anywhere, but there's also courses that, that really will help you. They might be a few $1,000s, and it's hard for them to build that trust because they're not associated with university, and they're just out there hey, I have this knowledge, I'm going to teach you how to do like I make $1 million a year now doing XYZ. I'm going to teach you exactly what I did. Is it guaranteed you're going to make $1 million? No, but if you stick with it, there's a good chance. And I think that's where people really don't get enough out of online courses from these people who, they're not like traditional educators. They're not associated with universities. I feel like they try to implement some accountability. Maybe they have like a Facebook group that you can be a part of to like bounce ideas off of other people, but it's really tough. And I think the one real advantage of the education, like the higher education system, is the accountability. Like when I was going through engineering school, I couldn't have done that on my own. I mean, I could have technically, I could have figured it out. Maybe it would have taken me a lot longer, but just having somebody, watch over me and make sure that I was progressing at the right rate. If somebody was doing that, they're like, hey, I know how to build a 7-8 figure business online, and I'm going to stand over you and watch you and guide you for 2 to 4 years until you get there.
And have milestones just like throughout the ages. So instead of having after your freshman year, you have to have a hypothesis that you're testing. After your sophomore year, you should be at the point where you already at least tested it with one client. And by the time you hit junior, should be making some money, start building your team. By senior, you should be ready to just go straight into it as a CEO. It would be killer. At that point, I think people would love to just pay upfront to even do it. Right now, it's hard to justify. Like you were saying, it's really hard to justify paying $60,000 a year to get an education that does not guarantee revenue even, or even a job.
Right.
There's people right now that's like applying to jobs that's right out of college that is just not like getting anything, just because there is less focus on even expertise or experience. It's like internships is probably the most powerful way to even get a job after college. And many don't really get told by the educational facility that you have to get them. So it's interesting. I completely agree. I mean, nothing is more effective than actually starting your own company. And I can't tell you how many times investor keeps telling me like, oh yeah, Martin, after this, just promise me you don't get an MBA. Because like right now you're getting one right now.
Exactly. Yeah. You're learning everything you could possibly, and then some, right? Because that practical experience is what really is the most important thing. That's what everybody wants to, if you ever did want, like, not to say that you want to, I can't imagine why you would want to do this, but if you ever did want to work for somebody else, like they want to know about the experience. They don't care about your education. As soon as as soon as you have a little more experience than education, they're like only looking at that. Even right out of college, I mean, employers are like, maybe straight out of college, they're interested in what classes you took. And then a year out, they're like, I don't care what you took first semester of junior year. Like, who cares? And that seems like a big deal as a student. You're like, oh man, I got an A in whatever it was,
I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but I've never shown my resume to or even to any employer that I ever worked for. They didn't even ask me for my resume. It was like, they didn't even ask me for my transcripts. They haven't asked me for, it's very curious. And I feel like most of that comes from just like building that mentor relationship. Most of the jobs I got was through like working with mentors who either put me in touch with people who needed people with my background or expertise, or people who just ended up hiring me directly after we worked together as like kind of a mentor-mentee kind of relationship. So it's like even that wasn't even mentioned once by a professor, which is like just relational, really.
Yeah, and that's what, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. People can figure out whether or not you're smart enough and you have the knowledge to do what you need to do. But way more important is, can I work with you? Like that's the main thing. Like when I've been in interviews where I've been asked a ton of technical questions, and I'm like, and I understand that, especially for engineering, there has to be some of that. But I want to know, even as the person being on the interview, applying for the job, like I want to know whether I can work with you as an employer, and you should be more interested in whether you can work with me as an employee. Right. Instead of like, you can teach me some of this other stuff. If I don't know, if you give me a quick, like a pop quiz in the middle of an interview, and I forget a formula or something, and that has to do with like physics or whatever, and I like forget that for a second. That doesn't mean I'm a bad candidate necessarily. Like that's something I may have just forgotten. I can go look it up.
Plus, what situation will you ever find yourself not being able to even search for it or figure it out if you already know the context of, okay, this exists, I will find it. So exactly. It's completely unrealistic. I mean, how does that work for you when you're like now hiring people? I know for me, it's like I definitely look at certain stuff, but it's very skewed to what the people actually are like, and whether or not I can see them as a culture fit.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, when I'm looking at a potential partner because that's most of I don't really hire any employees, because I try and kind of keep my business really lean in terms of that. I try and just work with partners who have a certain skill set that I don't have to hire them full time. I can kind of hire them as much as I need to or as little as I need to, but so it can just be a little more flexible that way. But even though they're not traditional hires, I'm still looking at, can I work with these people? Can I teach them the technical things that I know I need them to do, and just kind of get them up to speed, up to my level. They may be beyond my level. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but so if they're not quite at the level that I'm expecting, like technically with whatever they're doing, whether they're writing content or they're helping me with engineering or whatever it is, as long as I can get them up to speed and I can work with them, that really is the most important thing. They've got to have some good foundation of like, hey, I know generally I'm pretty proficient at doing this task, and I know how to do it. But if you can't work with somebody, it's just not gonna be good long term. Even if they're just the absolute best, they're killer at what they do, but they suck to work with, then not worth it. Oh,
100%.
Same thing with clients. Yeah, if you have a consulting business, same thing with clients. No matter how much money they have and they're willing to throw at a project. I've done one big project where I almost wish I hadn't done it at all. Like it wouldn't have necessarily been worth the money, because the hassle was intense. It just brought down the whole vibe of myself and my business for months, and so it's just not worth it when you can afford to be picky about the people that you work with. Even the clients you work with, it's important.
Right. I mean, it's tricky though. For clients, especially, it's especially as you're growing. I mean, for us, for the first year that we were in existence, we just started as a bootstrap company. It was really just built to solve a problem that I had at a job that I had, and then we kind of spawned it out. When it launched, we grew about 60% month over month, and then hit profit about a month, like 2 months in, and then it continued to grow. But it was all just nights and weekends. So we were still kind of just hungry, seeing the first couple of customers come in. Nothing was more exhilarating or intoxicating than seeing that first person that was like, oh, you're signing up for $45 a month for what we just tossed together. Like, this is a real life human that sees value in what we created. I mean, that's I always see like the quintessential reason for why we do what we do. And letting that go, just like, I feel like I'm the one that just needs to get over myself whenever I run into a client that is like hard to work with or hard to communicate with. Then it's like, well, no, I'm giving a service. I have to get over myself. But I feel like at one point you hit that barrier where it's like, you know what, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Hurting my ability to help other clients, or this is hurting my ability to even be positive at work. And it's, no, you're spot on. I mean, there's definitely clients that I regret, but there's like majority of them not, thankfully.
And that's the most important thing. And I think it's important, no matter what product or service you sell, to be like, hey, this isn't a good fit. Whether it's like, I mean, I have a service-based business and I also have a product business. So two radically different business models, priced radically different price points. service side, I'm working with people one-on-one, and we're going through a process of developing a product and helping them launch their product. And then on the product side, we sell a product and ship it to the customer. And, that's kind of it. But I have bad clients and customers for both. And you just kind of, I get to deal with each one much differently. The consulting side, I have to be a little bit, there's more communication of you sort of have to try and work through things. If it's not going to work out, then there's ways of just being like, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for you or for me. But this has to be a good fit going both ways. For the product side, it's a little easier because we can just be like, please return our product and just don't go away. If you don't like it for whatever reason, which we've had a few who are just like, don't like our product, that's okay. It's not a good fit. We're fine with that. But just go away. And actually one recently that we just killed this guy with kindness with that. We're just like, no worries, man. Just send it back. You're fine. And he was like huffing and puffing and going back and forth. He's like, all right, I'll give this a chance. We're like, I'm kind of sitting back like, you don't have to. It's okay. Really don't. But I think he kind of realized how absolutely ridiculous he was being. And so we're just like, all right, man, but don't write us a bad review because you're being crazy. We just rather you send it back. No hard feelings. We'll give you back your money. That's it. But
that's the absolute best response you can ever have. I mean, if you're just, giving them exactly what they want, exactly what they ask for, smile, just keeping the positive attitude, even to the harshest of criticism, then it's like that. At that point, you can't ever be taken down to their level if there's ridiculous complaints or, I mean, usually when I see any ridiculous complaint or anything that's going wrong and that's just overly dramatic compared to what the problem is, then it's always like, no, they're people. They probably have the worst day of their life right now.
Exactly.
It'll be fine. Just respond kindly. They'll read back at it in 2 days and they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we're good.
Exactly.
But again, nobody teaches you how to really respond to that either. Nobody teaches you how need to approach those situations or the fact that those situations is common. I mean, I feel at least even through entrepreneurship, I don't know if I want to call it entrepreneurship college. It's a degree in it. They don't talk about how you treat customers, which was kind of curious. So if you ever spin out this idea that we thought of now with the
I think we might have something, man.
College. There it is.
Yeah, I think we've got
one of the classes.
I think in 20-25 minutes we just figured out a new entrepreneurial college system. It's like a hybrid of all the good stuff that's out there. I think we got some going. That'd be awesome. I think we could do a whole episode on that, but I definitely want to talk to you about RespondFlow, which is the business that you're working on now. And it's really interesting because I've learned a lot recently about SMS, or just a fancy acronym for text messaging. There's a lot of SMS marketing, buzz going around right now, and how much better it can be than email and all this stuff. So I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And what advantages of implementing SMS into a marketing strategy for your business are there? And what sets your platform apart from others that offer kind of a similar service?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, SMS has just blown up over the last, I would say 2 years, but it's really been around since 2016. And the kind of thought behind even creating RespondFlow back in 2019 was I was running a sales team at my previous job with a medical device startup that was selling prosthetics, and we were having a hard time initially selling to doctors just because there's a lot of MacGyvers out there and artisans that would rather hand carve out of wood a prosthetic socket and say, this is art, it's beautiful, even though it's not necessarily medical or clinically better than the new technology on the market. So the technology that we were selling was started by kind of a incredibly smart guy that worked for NASA. He was working on the kind of Mars suits for the exoskeleton suits that they're going to be using for that. And while he was doing that, he was building it to be as weightless as possible, even in gravity. So that way there would be no friction and you could wear the suit for days on end without even feeling it. And then he realized, well, that's exactly what prosthetics is on Earth. Like, why are we not spinning this technology out? So he kept the IP, spun it out to be a prosthetic socket. Incredible, obviously, increased circulation, and there was a lot of benefits, but won't dig too deep into that. But selling that to practitioners seemed weirdly hard. It was like, well, the practitioners would rather just make them out of plastic. Obviously, wood was a joke. They don't do that anymore. But honestly, not that far ago. So, and then, so we decided to just make our own clinical chain and offer it to the patients themselves, because obviously they should have the power to choose to get this technology if they want. And it just blew up. I mean, it went incredible. Suddenly we had like 3,000 leads a month from patients across the world that wanted to fly in to, and this was in Oklahoma City, to get this technology. So we had people flying in from Germany and England and Spain and really all over the place. And it was very interesting. Obviously, it was great to feel that energy. But the problem was when we were trying to reach out to these people to actually get them scheduled. In my background, I was working with an AI omnichannel chatbot startup in Denver and seeing how like the big companies did this using IBM Watson. With Expedia, Nike, Unilever, and Transamerica. So I knew that if you had $3 million a year to put into that licensing fee, you can make it incredible. But it was like, we're small tech, like startup in Oklahoma. There's no way. I wouldn't get that budget anyway. So I was like, okay, well, let's just try and get a hold of these people. First, we were just doing it manually, calling them after we had them schedule a time on Calendly. And I had the worst conversion rates of my entire career of 7%. And these was validated people that had given their doctor name and contact detail, their insurance cards, like literally everything. They were ready to come into the clinic. And we were just doing an initial screening call and they just didn't pick up. And that was after they picked the time on their calendar. So I was like,
that's wild.
This is embarrassing. I need to figure out what's going on.
What was it? What happened? What was the breakdown?
So I called almost all of them that didn't pick up the initial time around, to the point where they finally pick up, because we call them 4 times in a row. Somebody thinks there's an emergency.
And they're like, what? And you're like,
no,
you don't be upset with me. You picked
I was over there.
No, did you not remember? Like, were you drunk when you did that?
Like, please. Like, I thought you want to talk to me. I was super excited to talk to you. And obviously it wasn't me talking to all of them. We were like 12 people. So it was got in front of all these, and we turned out that the majority of them was just screening their calls. They were afraid of robocallers. So they wouldn't pick up if they didn't recognize the phone number. And it was like pretty big epiphanies. I was like, okay, well, sales team, let's just start texting everybody. Let's just say like, hey, 30 minutes at a time. Hey, this is Martin. Super excited to learn more about you, getting you into like comfortable prosthetic socket that you can wear days on end. Looking forward to talking to you in 30 minutes. And by doing so, we saw an instant conversion rate increase of 233%, which is just eye-opening. Now, the second problem was my sales team was having 4 of these calls an hour. They would be on a call and they would be texting Meredith while they were on a call with Bob. So they would be like, hey, Bob, like, here's the, and then they would call Meredith Bob. And it was, it was just, the human error was just ridiculous. And especially coming from the background where I knew that it was possible to automate. And that it was possible to be as personal as possible, even using voice. It just was, okay, well, I need to be able to just automate this. So, and it was SMS. So I was like, okay, this is ancient. This is archaic. Come on, it must be possible to just automate this. There's email automation software out there that's been around for decades. So I checked every tool in the market for about 4 months. And there was 3 very key things to personality, like, or making it as personal as possible, that was missing on every single tool. And that was using a 10-digit local phone number, allowing the customer to text back or call back and actually reach the sales rep that supposedly reached them. And ultimately having it have the same automation features that modern marketers are used to through email marketing. And no tool in the market did that. So I was like, well, screw it. Let's build it, because obviously this is a need. I mean, this is not something that I was uniquely having a problem with. So I was at the Newark airport I remember this very vividly, at the SAS lounge with a beer in my hand, about to fly home for Christmas. And I had 30 minutes before my flight was leaving. So called up the smartest guy I knew, Austin Graham. He was one of my co-founders. He was the youngest professor in OU computer science history at the time, and was studying his PhD in machine learning and sentiment analysis. So I was like, okay, if this man says it's impossible, it's impossible.
Right. Yeah, but he's a good first call, that's for sure.
Yes. He's pardon my language, on the shit test on whether or not my ideas is just obscene. So called him up. It was like, this seems pretty interesting. Like, this is definitely not a hard problem to solve. Like, it must be something that exists, right? And I was like, no, I've searched everything like for 4 months. This needs to exist.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, let's build it. So we started. That was like in December of 2018. We were talking about how it would take us just about 6 weeks to get it launched. Ended up taking 6 months.
Yep,
it wasn't as
right.
easy. It wasn't as easy as we thought.
Yeah, not impossible though, which is
not impossible.
That's it. As long as it's not impossible, then you can do it. Just money and time, or some combination of the two.
Exactly, or just being stingy. Like we were just like building it from scratch. I think I put in personally like max 10 grand for the first year. Because we were all just working out of the goodness of our heart and obviously ownership, and growing it steady. But as soon as we launched it, it was lucky that we kind of hit the nail on the head with how I had hypothesized that this wasn't a unique problem. And along the way, like as I was building like the website, I was like, this is ridiculous. So we brought on one of my third co-founders, Matt, who had been doing marketing for Amex and Ferrari in New York. And he was like, yeah, I'll just handle the marketing. Don't worry. I was like, thank you.
That's
Let's
awesome.
just do that. And then lastly, brought on Peter Daggett, who was helping out with sales as like the fourth co-founder. So we all moved into the same house in OKC, continued to kind of sell this weekends, nights, pushing updates, handling customers, setting up payments. It was really our entire life at that point. It was a hobby. Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing though. I mean, that's stuff that people like you and me are extremely passionate about. And so is all of my co-founders. So this was really just a privilege. We were just having a hobby that was making us money. And growing it was just very fun because we were talking to people, we were building solutions for them, getting them excited about the texting aspect and adding that into their business. And that's where we got to the point where we were basically helping so many different customers in various different industries. And we took the approach that I would probably caution other people to do, which was building a tool that was able to help in various different ways and not targeted at one specific problem solution. I mean, initially, of course, it was built around the problem that I had leading that sales team. But suddenly it was also like super helpful when COVID hit for businesses that didn't have like a online ordering system. So that without them having to upgrade or pay for DoorDash fees or Uber Eats fees, they could just put the phone number on their website and say, hey, just text your order in. We'll run it out. We'll, of course, just like charge your credit card, give you a call, have you just pay it on like over the phone. And then we'll get the food to you so that you can come pick it up. So that's where we saw a lot of our growth like last year. And then, of course, continuing into this year, focusing more on brick and mortar retail and franchise locations. Okay.
That's awesome. But yeah, you bring up a good point about kind of spreading yourself a little too thin sometimes when you start out. You want to solve all the problems, right? You want to solve all the problems for everybody. Like that seems, first of all, you just want to do that because you want to help all these different people and you see that opportunity and that's great. And then also you kind of, a lot of times it's easy to see, chase the money, right? Because you're like, well, the bigger the audience, the bigger the need, the more money I can make. But I think you're right, especially when you're starting out. It's important to have like a beachhead strategy, right? You pick one thing and that's what you're going to kind of like break through with. That's your beachhead part of it. And then once you're through, and you've established demand, you've built up your technology, and you understand how to make it work with one niche or one segment, then it's easier to add on the functionality to service different niches, different segments. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we learned that the hard way. I mean, it's not like it didn't work out. It all ended up thankfully working out when it came to our approach to it. We sort of backwardsly ended up with our initial segments. Now, of course, we're kind of branching out with other tools and kind of further up in the telecom pipeline, which is why we just closed our recent raise. But yeah, when we first started, of course, doing this side hustle, we would spend the weekends walking door to door selling this. I mean, it was, we had no budget. We had no budget for paid ads. We had no budget for anything, but we knew that we wanted to grow this. And I remember we would go out and grab lunch or brunch during the weekends, like all co-founders, and we would get waited on, and Peter would try and sell the waiter. And we would end up getting awesome. A business card of the owner, and then we would get them set up the next week. So it's that sort of growth that was probably the part that I'm going to remember the most. How every sale was growing us by a significant percentage, and we were feeling every single one being so close to all the customers. But yeah, I mean, right now that we're getting to focus more on our core customers and then going deeper into other product offerings as well. And of course, growing our team. We're no longer just living in the same house and having the office out of the living room.
You get beyond the garage, bootstrap kind of thing, which is great. That's what you're going for, right? But those are kind of fun days. I mean, I definitely remember back to starting up my product-based business with my business partner, and we make bamboo display racks for boards, bikes, and skis, and we were sitting in. We actually finished, so we would have them cut. We'd have a manufacturer CNC cut all the parts so that they didn't look like a beaver chewed them, which they would have if we had done that, right? So we had that, and then we would hand route all the edges, knock off the corners, sand, brand, and then finish. And the finishing process was like we were using urethane spray cans in a 20-foot shipping container that we just had. We had a business partner who's no longer in the business, but we were set up our shop kind of like where he had his business. And he had a 20-foot shipping container that was he just had plopped right next to where we did everything else. And that was our finishing booth. That was like our spray booth. And man, it sucked in the cold. Like the winter is like 20 degrees, and we're wiping you get all gunky on the end of the can. And so we'd have it wouldn't spray, and we were spraying with, it was brutal, but also like, it's kind of cool to look back on those days and reminisce a little bit, and also, and be happy that we're where we are, that we've kind of like gotten past that. But there's definitely fun times when you're just grinding it out. You're doing all the things, learning so much so quickly, and figuring everything out. So that's
especially
awesome.
When like you hit milestones, then it's like easy moment to just kind of sit back and look back at it. I'm just like, why did we do that? Why did we think that was normal?
Exactly. Well,
it was the pain, but it's good to remember. I mean, that's part of the culture that we're trying to keep at RespondFlow as well, where it's like all new kind of hires that we bring on. Like, and this is kind of a freebie for whoever's listening if they're looking for a job. But the secret for an interview with me is definitely like, if I ask you like, what are you seeing yourself in like 2 years from now? If the answer is I want to run my own company, then hell yeah. Like, nothing is better for me to hear. It's like, yeah, come here, feel the entrepreneurial spirit, bring that entrepreneurial spirit. Because that means that you're going to be excited about doing whatever the task ends up being, because you can translate that to your own company. And then of course I'll help you. Like, I would love to help you grow and get to the point where you can actually like scale up your own company. I mean, that I feel is the ultimate dream, because then you also get to work with people who have the same spirit and who's willing to put in those long days when it's necessary. But then of course also feel feel it when we can celebrate really big.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I love that. And I think a lot of businesses, a lot of owners would be scared to have that mindset, that mentality, especially when hiring, because they're maybe afraid that it's going to be kind of tough to work with somebody else who's entrepreneurial like them. They might be a little bit too much of a cowboy and wanting to do their own thing. And then also a lot of owners would be like, nah, I want this person to be with me as long as possible. I want them to like be excited enough to work for me, but not so excited that they want to go do their own thing and that I have to go look for somebody else. So I love that. I think you probably get some amazing people that way and get some amazing work.
Yeah, no, incredible people who's looking for like personal growth. And I mean, it's like as a business owner, like previously it was like as an employee, like my employers gained a lot from me starting my own company on the side, because then suddenly I got exposed to everything. I got deeper into bookkeeping. I got deeper into understanding like the legal landscape so that I could come back and bring that into the company as well. And it's like, that's the same thing that I feel, well, I would want the same. Like RespondFlow wouldn't be around if my previous employer didn't kind of support me on it. Didn't say that's like, amazing. Hey, like go do it. Like spend the weekend on it. Like it's awesome. Yeah. And if I was told instead, no, you got to shut that down or you're fired, then it would be, well, we wouldn't be here today. So it's, I would definitely want to support that. And I mean, you definitely get the best of people. But there's also levers to, of course, like if there's super valuable people and you want to keep them around, I mean, we give all our employees equity. So obviously there's the natural 1-year cliff, 4-year vesting. So like there's always that incentive to stay if that is something that's wanted. Yeah. In that case, keeping stuff like on as a side hustle. But ultimately, the freedom to leave is definitely the way that you get the best people.
Yeah. And you're giving them those options, kind of the best of both worlds. You're helping them to grow and do what they want to do, which ends up helping them give you better work. They're learning more. They're giving you better work. And then if you're also giving them the opportunity to be invested and have, equity in the business, like a lot of people, even if they don't want to start their own business, they still want to feel like the more they do, the more they get out. And, the traditional, employment, you're not doing, that's just not how it works. Like you don't get to be like, hey, I want to give you better work. I want to do more work. And you're like, cool, but you're going to get the same salary. So it doesn't matter. Right. But like, if you feel like you have ownership of it and you're sitting on a rocket ship to the moon and you are just excited to get there, you're just as excited to get there as the owner is. There's nothing more powerful than that.
And I feel it's like the same incentivization where it's like for like what drives the co-founders, like that should be the same thing that drives the rest of the team. Like for right now that we just closed the 2.5 million seed round, like 2 weeks ago, now that we're celebrating on Friday and having a huge party, it's not, we get to celebrate the co-founders. No, it's like, no, you get to celebrate yourself. You get to celebrate with your friends and bring your family and just like, hey, my equity just quadrupled. And I'm like on top of the moon. Like that's how it should be. And I feel like it's a better environment to come into as well. Especially, I mean, I have been in companies where there was no equity and you can feel the tension. It was like, why are we making certain business decisions? Like, is it just to preserve your equity? Like, why would we not raise more capital here? Why would we not do this? And it's not on the same page. And decisions become a little obscure and it definitely hurts morale. So personally, I could not ever see running a company where I had, of course, full-time employees, but full-time employees where they also don't kind of share in that. So it's definitely an important incentivizer.
I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. So you were talking about, we talked about a bunch of things there, but one of the things that stuck out was you mentioned selling. Like in the beginning, your sales process was very manual. You were like going to dinner and pitching the waiter, for the product, which is really cool. But at some point you get beyond that, right? You need to the sales process needs to be more efficient in order to scale. Like you there's only so many dinners you can have, right? And
Right.
only so many waiters you can pitch in one night. So what's been the most efficient way to market your product that you've seen so far?
I would say the most powerful thing that we ever did was really double down on a good product hunt and beta list launch.
Okay.
I mean, both are free, both are easy for like very, I guess, cash-strapped founders, as I was, where it was just putting together a good launch. Obviously, on product hunt, knowing the little small community rules of at least having a photo of a cat. So small stuff like that, where that helps you get to the point where you can have product of the day. If you have product of the day, I mean, that was back in 2020. We still have product hunt as one of our largest organic traffic drivers.
Really?
And the same with the beta list launch, probably even a lower barrier to enter. Where it's the same as product hunt. You put together a profile, put together images of the actual product, and then of course describe how this can benefit you, and then giving a discount for people to try. And yeah, that is also like probably top 2 or 3 traffic drivers. So there's small kind of growth acts like that. And then of course, like early on, as it was less about showing up as like I guess a tool that others would necessarily choose over another, especially as it was brand new off the press. We knew that we had these like value props, like I was explaining earlier, where I could then go to Quora, I could go to Reddit, and I could see people who was asking the same questions, who was in the same situation as me, and I could answer them. Well, this is exactly why I made this, and then sending them to the website. Super easy. It was like, well, you're actually asking a question. It's not even like you're looking for the solution. You're actually like the most defined definition engaged of looking for a solution. Yeah. So
like if you're
then that solution was super effective.
Yeah. When you get desperate enough to jump on Quora, I can't even say it. Instead of just doing a Google search, because I feel like that's what most people do. But if you're going on to something like you're going to a platform like that, and you're asking people, you're really like, you're almost desperate for a solution, right? If you're going on Reddit, like, how do I do that? How do I solve this problem? Like, help. And that's such a really cool opportunity to step in. And that's tough to scale, right? Because you can't sit there all day long and answer people's questions. But just a really cool way to, and that content stays out there, right? So people, people
search for it, and that was the best way to scale it up also, because like then suddenly the answers was out there. But I think the best way to ensure that you answer people timely was I set up Google alerts. Okay. And I would recommend this for any entrepreneur that's solving a specific problem, setting up Google alerts for your specific keywords or your specific value prop on a question, and guiding like Google where you want them to send you. Because then they can send you an email every single day at a certain time, showing you what happened in the last 24 hours. And then you can just click the links, answer, click the link, answer, click the link, answer. Super easy. It took me like 5 minutes out of each day. And I knew that I was available and could see everything that was happening across any website, because it was really anything that showed up on Google.
That's a really cool tip. I've actually never tried that. So Google Alerts, you can have it search for whatever and it'll search on whatever platform you're trying to. You
can specify where, or you can just like have it do what Google does anyway, which is index every single website. So if you have it just searching every website, then you can also use this for competitive research and competitive kind of upkeep. Like for especially a highly competitive industry like we are at, as new text marketing software pops up every day. It's very good to see what is it that the competitors are moving into, what is the kind of ebb and flow of it. And that's one of the kind of hidden weapons that I feel like I have at my disposal that I would definitely recommend other entrepreneurs set up.
That's really cool. That's a tip that honestly I haven't heard too much about, but I love it. Anything to, I think what's cool about what you're doing is, in your marketing strategy right from the beginning, is that you're really like, you want to be engaged with the customer. you're not trying to disassociate or disconnect yourself. You're not like running away to be like, I want to have as little to do with the customers and the people who are having these problems. You're really running after it. You're running head on into it. Like, hey, how do I help these people? How do I answer their questions? How do I personalize this? Which is really cool and interesting with the platform that you're building, because you're building something to help automate marketing, and yet you're doing it in a really personalized way. So I really love that, and it's a good chance I'll be a customer at some point, maybe soon, man, because I know that text is really important. Email, having a list of either email or phone numbers or really both is the most important thing, right? Because you control that. You don't have to pay another platform to remarket to them. So,
exactly. And that's the biggest value prop that we're seeing, is the fact that you can own that yourself. But especially now, like the industry has really shifted to be a lot more regulated. And that happened this March, actually.
Yeah,
where we got, and like iOS, and then also right now with 10DLC. So for texting communication specifically, right now the carriers are demanding everybody to be a US company, which completely agree with. That's going to stop any sort of malicious texting, that people just buy a VoIP phone number and just send out a blast of something that nobody even opted into. But then they're outside of the US, so they can't even be really prosecuted for it, according to TCPA. So it's, for right now, it's a good thing, and it's going in the right direction. But there's so much more to keep on top of, and that's really a portion of why we raised the capital that we did just now. Making sure that we're at the forefront of ensuring that we can just keep it super simple for our customers. That they don't have to worry about whether or not they're breaking compliance, which can cost them like $10,000 per message they send, or even get their brand blocked. We just handle that in the back end using the analytics and the algorithms that we have at our disposal.
That's huge. And that's something, compliance issues are something that people wouldn't necessarily think about. It's just not something that every entrepreneur is going to want to, they're just not going to know all that stuff. Like, they're not going to know maybe that it even exists. And then if they do, it's like, well, how do I keep up with it? Am I in compliance? Am I not?
Yeah. And it's too late. It's nobody even talks about it. And that's a big thing. So, I mean, definitely stay tuned over the next couple of months. There's going to be a couple of waves we're going to try and create there to ensure that business owners at least know of it, because it's almost unethical how the carriers have kept it under the radar. And the first time they're going to hear about it is when they get a letter in the mail from T-Mobile telling them that they owe them $10,000. I know that would have killed us in our early days. And I'm sure there's other entrepreneurs that's in the same situation where they're bootstrapping, can't carry something that big.
No, and especially for something that, even if you're not trying to, you're not trying to necessarily break the law and be out of compliance, but man, that would really suck if you're just trying to, bootstrap things. You're just trying to, get to that next level, and you're out of compliance with something you had no idea that you had to be in compliance with, or you didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden you weren't trying to do anything wrong, and all of a sudden you're getting fined. That would be a huge deal. So that's cool. And people are probably, on the customer side, it sounds like they're probably more responsive to the more personalized way that you guys are, or your customers are able to deliver their text campaigns, right? I mean,
absolutely. When they get the message, it's like, for most of our customers, the message goes out in a local personal phone number that when they text back, it actually reaches the person that reached out. So many times, if there's a blast that goes out from a business, it could look as if the business owner took time out of their day to just follow up. Just like, so it's definitely effective, and seeing the responses is, of course, the most gratifying thing we can do.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. Well, man, we touched on so many things. We could take a few hours here for sure, but and we'll have to have you back on the show, because I know there's a lot more that we could talk about. But as we wrap up this episode, if you had to leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would that be?
One piece of advice. Wow. I would say the biggest one is continuing to stay lean. Money goes faster than you could ever imagine when you get funding. And it's easy to find yourself with a burn that just kind of racks up, because there's one thing entrepreneurs get right on a projection, it's the expenses. And hitting the growth is where the question marks come. And what is the implications if the growth does not happen exactly like projected?
Yeah. The expenses are always going to be there. Sometimes if you might get them right, or you might underestimate them, but I feel like people don't usually overestimate the expenses. So
exactly. They always do that correct.
Yeah. So that's awesome, man. I really love that. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I think that's a wrap for this episode. We want to thank you so much, Martin, for taking your time out of your day to join me in adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. And thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Martin's working on, check out respondflow.com. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.